Man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills. Arthur Schopenhauer? Arthur Schopenhauer was not born a pessimist. He did not arrive in the world believing that life is a cruel fraud, that morality is a costume worn by the powerful, or that human existence is a battlefield where only the ruthless prevail. He learned it by living through disappointment, observation, and the slow peeling away of consoling illusions. His early path looked like anyone's: ambition, curiosity, and almost religious faith in reason. But by the time he finished his masterpiece, The World as Will and Representation, he had become a philosopher of shadowed clarity, someone who dared say what most sense, but refused to admit out loud. His verdict was blunt. Life does not distribute justice. Power is not awarded to virtue, and those who win are rarely the best among us. If this resonates, take 1 second, now subscribe, and drop the word clarity in the comments, so we keep going deeper together. Schopenhauer's philosophy didn't sprout from academic seclusion. It grew out of pain, estrangement, and a ruthless honesty about how things actually work. His father, a hard-edged merchant, saw the world without the haze of idealism. His mother, a celebrated writer, recoiled from her son's severity. Their relationship fractured. When Schopenhauer entered the intellectual arena, he was certain his clarity would be rewarded. Instead, he published in the long shadow of Hegel, whom he despised not merely for his ideas, but for what he embodied: the triumph of perception, posture, and institutional power over truth. Schopenhauer even scheduled his lectures against Hegel's to prove a point. The point proved itself against him. Hegel's hall overflowed. Schopenhauer's sat empty. It wasn't the profundity of ideas that conferred dominance. It was the mastery of influence. That humiliation clarified something that would pulse at the core of his system. Human beings are not ruled by reason, but by a blind, ceaseless impulse he called the will to live. It is not compassionate, it is not fair, it is not noble. It strives, devours, and survives. Man can do what he wills, he wrote, but he cannot will what he wills. The decisions we rationalize are often after the fact commentaries on deeper compulsions, biological drives, status cravings, and learned reflexes. In the theater of power, the conscientious hesitate and the ruthless act. The conscientious ask if they should. The ruthless ask if they can. The conscientious seek justice. The ruthless manufacture rules that guarantee their victory. But the will's genius is not only force, it is disguise. It dresses domination as merit, greed as cooperation, oppression as necessity. It whispers to tyrants that they are guardians, to magnates that they are builders, to demagogues that they are saviors. And the world believes because most of us prefer a comforting story to a difficult truth. This is not a defect of a few. It is a feature of the species. We follow strength, or more precisely, what looks like strength, especially when we are afraid. Success is mistaken for competence. Wealth is mistaken for wisdom. Certainty is mistaken for authority. The will to live hides inside ideologies, institutions, and slogans until we can no longer tell the difference between moral language and raw appetite. History doesn't merely confirm Schopenhauer, it dramatizes him. Julius Caesar promised the restoration of order and dissolved the republic. Napoleon extolled liberty and crowned himself emperor. Neither man was the most virtuous available. Each was the most strategic. They didn't conquer with force alone, but with myth-making. A choreography of symbols, uniforms, parades, decrees, enemy images, and carefully staged acts of magnanimity. Power is a technology of perception long before it is a reality of law. And the unsettling part isn't simply that such men rise, it's that they are celebrated. The crowd doesn't only endure the strong man, it often begs for him. Inter Nietzsche, who turned Schopenhauer's diagnosis into a sledgehammer against what he saw as the West's most soothing fictions. I argued that for 2 millennia, slave morality had taught the strong to feel guilty about their strength and the ambitious to be ashamed of their ambition. What had been vitality became sin. What had been weakness became virtue. He did not praise cruelty, but he loathed the way moralizing rhetoric anesthetized excellence, ambition, and creative power. On the genealogy of morality, Nietzsche showed how systems dressed their own self-interest as the good, and how the many tame the few by turning restraint into a hull, where Schopenhauer revealed the will's blind engine. Nietzsche asked what we should do with that engine: deny it, demonize it, or master it. He rejected the comforting split between good and evil, and replaced it with a tension between power and fragility, creation and decay. The last man, his mocking symbol of a comfort-addicted, risk-averse culture, prefers security to freedom, predictability to greatness, genta, and aesthetics to ecstatic danger. The alternative for Nietzsche was not the brute, but the creator, the one who takes responsibility for values rather than outsourcing them to tribe, tradition, or trend. Power, in this sense, is not a license to harm. It is the courage and discipline to carve a path that no one grants and few understand. Modern psychology adds flesh to these bones. People gravitate toward those who project certainty. We use status as a heuristic for competence. We submit to authority when stressed. Fear narrows attention. Charisma stretches air. Propaganda doesn't need to persuade everyone only enough to set the mood music. The rest follow the beat. In organizational life, the same mechanisms hum. The quiet technician loses to the confident storyteller. Outcomes bend to narrative. Reputations outrun reality. If you see this and keep expecting fairness to correct it, you will be eternally confused. If you see it and decide to become a caricature of ruthlessness, you will be spiritually ruined. There is, however, a third path. Lucidity. Schopenhauer's prescription was not to become a predator, it was to stop being prey to illusions. Wisdom, he wrote, begins where suffering over the uncontrollable ends. The world will not deliver moral symmetry. Waiting for it to do so is a subtle form of self-abandonment. Nietzsche's addition is equally hard-edged. You can hide behind prefabricated codes to avoid the responsibility of choosing. If you abdicate that responsibility, others will make your choices for you and call it virtue. Between NA and cynicism lies a narrow, demanding way. See the game clearly, then play with conscience and competence, not consolation and denial. What does that look like in practice? First, learn to read narratives the way a chess player reads boards. Who benefits from this story? Which emotion does it recruit? Fear, resentment, pride, hope? What false binaries does it propose? What enemy does it require? Language is never neutral in the arena of power. Emergency justifies shortcuts, for the children sanctifies control. Security purchases obedience on credit. Politicians have always known this. Executives and influencers know it now. When a slogan appears, ask what it is hiding. Second, map incentives with more rigor than you map ideals. Ideals matter, but incentives win. If a system pays for appearances, it will get performances. If it rewards speed over substance, it will get shortcuts. If it promotes those who manage perception better than reality, it will get crises hidden until they explode. You can shout moral demands at such systems, or you can structure them so that alignment pays and manipulation costs. The adult choice is design. Third, cultivate a power that does not depend on theatrics. Competence, calm, and consequence. Competence makes you non-disposable. Calm makes you non-panicable. Consequence, your willingness to act on your boundary smacks. You, non-minute. Together, they form a quiet aura of authority that does not need to be loud to be real. People begin to choose your orbit, not because you advertise gravity, but because they feel it. Fourth, separate kindness from weakness and aggression from strength. Kindness without boundaries breeds resentment. Aggression without purpose breeds chaos. Strength is the capacity to keep your word under pressure, to make decisions under uncertainty, to absorb volatility without exporting panic. Kindness is to use that strength in service of something beyond your appetite. The union of the two is character. Fifth, refuse the narcotic of perpetual outrage. Outrage is a short-term stimulant and a long-term sedative. It keeps you feeling active while preventing you from being effective. Those who profit from your attention devolve complex realities into digestible villains, then sell you moral sugar. Choose instead the slow clarity of focus. Read long, think long, build long. Depth is a competitive advantage in a culture of whiplash. Sixth, create your own scorecard. If you measure yourself by applause, you will bend to the crowd and call it principle. If you measure yourself by status, you will imitate the already visible and call it ambition. Decide instead what winning means in your vocabulary craft: integrity, impact, mastery, stewardship, and audit your days by that metric. This is not romantic. It is armor. Seventh, be dangerous in the precise way that civilizes power. Dangerous to illusions, dangerous to gas, dangerous to the soft coercions that say, everybody thinks this, or good people agree, or only a monster would question. The point is not to delight in contrarianism. It is to maintain the right to reality when the costs rise. If you will not pay that cost, someone else will set the prices for you. When you live like this, something shifts. You stop expecting that virtue alone will carry you. You stop resenting that ruthlessness sometimes does. You begin to play a longer game in which your advantage is not innocence, but resilience, not purity, but precision. You remain kind without being naive, strategic without being cruel. You refuse to let the world's ugliness draft you into its army. You also refuse to let the world's prettiness talk you out of your senses. You become, in Nietzsche's sense, a creator. You shoulder the weight of value-making in a place that would love to sell you a pre-labeled kit. Does this guarantee worldly triumph? No, and both Schopenhauer and Nietzsche would laugh at the question. The point is not to guarantee anything. The point is to live lucidly enough that whatever happens, you are not a puppet of your own wishful thinking or someone else's pageantry. Freedom is not getting everything you want. Freedom is not needing to believe lies especially beautiful ones. To keep going. Look again at the stories we tell about winners and losers. The victors of old did not merely swing swords, they authored myths. The moguls of now do not merely build companies, they curate realities. If you cannot see this, you will spend your life negotiating with mirages. If you can, you will begin to understand why the best often do not rise, and why the best thing you can do is become the kind of person who can see speak, and act without. You need not join the ranks of the ruthless to do that. You do need to abandon the fantasy that justice arrives on schedule if you behave nicely. The world is not a vending machine where you insert virtue and out drops victory. It is a stormy, pastorems reveal sailors. And if you learn to navigate by reading signs, setting sails, conserving strength, and timing your moves, you can cross waters that sink the loud and the lucky. Schopenhauer offered the sobriety. Our wills are not as free as we flatter ourselves. Our motives are less noble than we pretend. The engines of life are older than our ethics. Nietzsche offered the summons. Do not hide from power, refine it. Do not drown in morality, deepen it into responsibility. Do not worship the herd. Serve the future by becoming a self that does not need permission to exist. Between them lies a hard-won kind of hope, not the hope that systems will cleanse themselves or that the crowd will suddenly prefer truth to spectacle. They hope that a minority of lucid, competent, ethically dangerous people can become immune to manipulation and, by their presence, make manipulation less profitable. That is not utopia. It is a task. If you want an operating sentence to carry away, take this. See the game clearly, and then play clean and hard. Clean, because you must live with yourself. Hard, because the world will not make room for you unless you make room for yourself. And when the old theater returns with new costumes, when a Caesar promises safety, when a Napoleon promises meaning, remember what they knew and what you must. Perception rules until someone refuses to be ruled by it. Perhaps that is what Schopenhauer's line finally means for us. You cannot will your will, but you can watch it. In the watching, you can interrupt it. In the interruption, you can choose not perfectly, not omnipotently, but decisively enough to become dangerous to the right things. And perhaps that is what Nietzsche's most misunderstood word, overman, points to. Not a monster beyond good and evil, but a maker beyond second-hand values. Become who you are. Friedrich Nietzsche. If this gave you real value, like the video, subscribe, and share it with one person who needs lucid courage today. Turn on notifications. Save this to revisit, and check the description to choose your next step. Start with the Schopenhauer deep dive or the Nietzsche toolkit. I'll meet you there.